So let me get this straight. Georgia MANSUR, you're
Yes.
going to be showing us what?
I'm going to be showing you some new solutions to old problems. So taking watercolor in a new direction based on some of the things that are available to us now as watercolorists, to create texture. And the subject that I'm going to be painting is going to have like a bunch of like old peeling paint and things like that. So
that's where texture really comes in handy.
yeah, I love texture.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you go ahead and start teaching?
Okay, should I turn my
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let me know if you can see everything here. Is that good?
Side up or whatever.
Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. How's the view?
The view is beautiful.
Okay. So this is the subject that I've chosen, and it's an old window in France with a bunch of bougainvillea. Actually, it's in Italy, sorry. And yeah, so we're going to have a go with this, and I'll take you through step by step to see how we're going to approach it.
So is that a photograph you have right there?
This is a photo that I took. And
okay.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show you how I approach it and step by step what I do to create a painting like this.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so I've got my reference photo. I'm just going to put it over here out of your vision, but I need to see it. And I've already drawn up, you know, the window.
Okay.
So now what I'm going to do is I need to create the texture before I start painting. So I'm going to take some crackle paste. Not sure if you can see that, but and I've got just a little spatula that I use here.
So what exactly is crackle paste?
So crackle paste is an opaque medium, and it cracks when it dries. And with crackle paste, you kind of have to make it a little bit thicker so that it can actually crack. And then the other two medium that I'm using, they can be a lot thinner, because I do want the texture of the watercolor paper to show through with that. But let me
so you can paint watercolor on top of crackle paste.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it looks like you're painting it pretty thick with a palette knife.
Yeah, little spatula, because this one has to crack, and it needs to be thick enough to be able to crack.
How long does it take it to crack?
Probably about 10 minutes. And so what I did yesterday is I made one so that, you know, it would be ready for today. So we'll get this on, and then I will swap over to that one. But
so this adds a whole new dimension, really actually almost a three-dimensionality to watercolor painting.
Totally does. And then I'm going to use a watercolor ground, which is basically just liquid paper, really. It's paper fibers suspended in a medium. So I want to put this one on a little bit thinner, and I just want it to feel like it's, you know, a bit, just a bit random, because these are old buildings that have been there for centuries. And I want some of that character to show through. So I'm just kind of
you kind of want it to look like stucco.
Exactly. That's the whole point. So I'm trying to get that on. Sorry, I didn't tape this one down because
this one won't crack.
No, this one will not crack. But you can see that I'm kind of making it random. The more random, the better, because that makes it look more authentic. And authentic is what we're going for.
All right.
So that was the watercolor ground. The other one was the crackle paste. And now I'm going to do the hard molding paste, which is basically marble dust suspended in a medium.
What's it called?
Hard molding paste.
Molding paste. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, this one will dry a bit heavier and a bit harder. So if I wanted to use this, like if I had something that I really wanted it to hold the edge, that's when I would use the molding paste. But I'm just kind of doing a little bit of each one of them to show you the options that are available to you when you you can try some of these things. So that's basically all I'm going to need. Oh, that's not true. Sorry, I lied.
Don't lie.
Or since we're doing an Italian scene, a lie in Italian is a bugia.
Abuja.
A bugia. Isn't that a great
You're-
word?
You're putting a little molding paste on the windowsill as well.
This is the watercolor ground. I just kind of want to make it so that the window has been there for as long as the stucco. So I kind of
So
need it.
got layers of dried up paint on it.
Yeah, and it's probably been painted and sanded back and painted again and all of that. So I'll just, make it feel like it's also part of the scene. And you don't need tons, but you just want it to kind of feel like it's old.
Cool.
So,
Well, I've never seen this done before. This is the very first time on this program to do something like this.
well, I was hoping that I could do something slightly different for you because I know you have people every week and there's probably, people doing the same thing a lot because, yeah, it's just so anyway, this is done now for, it can now just go to dry. And if you're in your studio, you can actually use a hairdryer, and the part where I've made it really thick here, that will crack and look like old cracking plaster.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes.
Okay, so you're going to switch this out. You have a dry one now, right? You have a dry version?
Yeah. So kind of like a cooking show. I prepared one earlier. And here it is.
Okay.
Can you see it? Like, if I tip it up, can you see the texture?
You can see it, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So now what we need to do is the actual painting. So we're going to start off with our lightest lights. And if I look at my reference photo, my lightest lights, oh, actually, before we do that, let me just have you look at it in black and white so that you can see the values of, where the pattern of darks and lights happen.
Okay.
Now, the light kind of comes through this way and around, and there's a chink of light over on this side, and the darkest darks are right in through here. So I want to just be mindful of that.
Okay.
If you wanted to take your Sharpie and draw it out, you could, but I don't want to take up too much time. And as long as I have this one, I can paint from my reference photo here.
Okay, we'll put the reference photo back on screen.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, so you're going to start out with your lightest light.
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Well, the first thing I want to do is one of probably the most important, feature of this is the reflected light off of the sky in the windows. So you get a pattern of blue sky reflecting off of this part of the windows. So I'm going to get a little bit of blue.
So I want to ask you about your dishes because you've got pre-made dishes of goop.
Yeah, that's right. They're little swimming pools, I call them.
Yeah. Why do you do that?
I do it because I want when watercolor is active and workable, you got to work really fast. And, I don't want to have to stop midway and pre-mix, and remix a color that I've already got going. So I'm just going to add a little bit more color. This isn't quite strong enough, but I can adjust it as I go. I'm using a square or flat bristle brush, but I want to create that pattern of the blue reflected light in this glass. So it doesn't matter if it's actually perfect because I can go back and correct those marks, with the with my brush about the what's it called, the door frame. That's the word I'm looking for, door frame. And I've gone over the line, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to go back over it later with some other colors and things. And I'll I think the idea is to slash and correct. You got to get something down and then you can correct it, but you got to get it down. So I'm just kind of making an irregular shape or pattern that sort of, so that the light is coming through here like so, right? And so that's my lightest light. And while I've got that on my brush, I just want to add a little bit of that into the background, or not the background, but the plaster at the back, so that when I add the other color, it feels like, that there's also reflected light in there as well.
Creates a little unity.
Yeah, unity and harmony. And I don't want it to take away from what I've already got going on, because this is important. This is just secondary. So I'll wipe that back slightly. I don't want it to take over too much. It's not the diva, it's the supporting cast. Okay. If we're talking about,
And that would make you the diva?
No. I'm the director. Never a diva. Okay, so the next lighter color that I'm using is Titanium Buff, which is a semi-opaque, creamy color. And I'm going to mix that in with what I've got going on in the plaster, because, this is kind of a plastery color. And it's lighter up here at the top. It's very sunstruck. So I want to get that happening as well. And like I said, I've got that little bit of blue in there. So it's creating color harmony, which is really important to me. And I'll get a little bit of that on. And then as it's coming closer to us, it's going to get warmer, right?
Warmer.
So cool colors recede and warmer colors advance. So what I'm going to do is, while I've got that buff titanium on there, I'm going to mix in a little bit of Naples yellow, which is another one of my semi-opaque colors. So I'll grab a little bit of the Naples yellow because it's a bit warmer, and I'm going to bring that forward into the front of the painting, so that over here you can see how that warmed that up a little bit. Can you see that?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, so as it's getting closer to us, and there's a chink of light over here on this side, so I want to make sure that still stays light and fresh.
Well, the texture really works. Just putting a brush mark over it really.
You can see that, right?
Really effective.
Yeah. So, in the olden days, as watercolors, the only tools we had to create texture was, with the actual paint, and like splattering it and doing those kind of things, which is still available to us, and we can do that anytime. But this is also really fun. So when I'm out in the field, I also use this technique. And because when you're outdoors, it dries quite quickly. And actually, that's a good time to walk around and stretch your legs or whatever. But I just want to integrate this a little bit so that it feels like this is all part of the same painting. And
So, what are you going to do when you're at the plein air convention? Have you figured that out yet? Because we have the pleasure of your company all the way from Sydney.
Yeah, so I'm going to be giving a demonstration in the expo hall, and I haven't decided what subject I'm going to do yet, but I'll figure it out. I just sort of.
You have a month.
Now, while we're on these lighter stages, I don't want to leave this blank. So what I need to do now, even though in my reference photo, this part is darker, there's a cast shadow there, or a darker reflection from something that's, you know, over here somewhere in that is out of our view. I still need to put some of these colors in the reflection so that, you know, we maintain that color harmony, even though it's going to be darker. I'd still need to put a little bit of that in there. So I'm just going to add a little bit in there. And then I'm going to adjust that color with, I'm going to change brushes now to a smaller brush so that I can achieve that. So the colors that I see in that darker reflection are more in the purples and the bougainvillea colors. So I sort of need to mix a little bit of that, and I've got some going there already, and I'll incorporate that. But I need a little bit of what I'm using here is Carbazole Violet, which is a purple, and I'm going to use a little bit of the quinacridone magenta. Okay, so I get a nice, like, deep, rich, purpley color with a little bit of that pink in it as well. Okay, I want to change brushes now that I've mixed that. I often will use like a bigger brush to do the mixing in my little swimming pools. And then I'll use a smaller brush to kind of integrate and get it into these colors. So I just want the softer edges to kind of be in there, but I want to get these darks in there. So make the edges a little bit rough, just so that, you know, you've got the idea that there's a darker reflection going on there. And you know what you can do is put in a little bit of the blue as well, just because, you know, we want it to feel like, you know, you meant it. And now it's actually darker than what you see here because, and I talk about this in my video with Streamline, is that watercolor dries 2 tones lighter than when it's wet and juicy. So you actually need to amp up these colors. And I kind of want to make sure that these are integrated.
So let's just repeat that. You said, what? Tell me again. You said it dries 2 tones darker?
Lighter.
Lighter.
So,
2 tones lighter.
yeah, so different to acrylic, which is the opposite. You've got to plan for, you know, acrylic dries 2 tones darker than what it looks like when it's wet and juicy. And watercolor dries 2 tones lighter. So if it's right, if it's looking right when I'm, you know, putting it on, it's probably not right. I need to just adjust those values. So it's a value thing. And, you know, I know you have some too, but I always use my red glasses, you know, to find the values. And that's a really good way of sort of making sure that your values are correct. So I'm just continuing on with the pattern of light and dark, because I want the contrast here in the middle of the painting. But I might have to just spray that a little bit so that the those edges aren't so hard. So I just have a little spray bottle of, you know, fine mist, and I just want those edges to kind of melt into each other. And I'll do it over here as well. Now we're going to be painting over this, so it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because there's going to be an overlay when this is dry of the bougainvillea. So the next thing that I want to do is, I can't really work in that area right now. I need to let that dry. So I'm going to go to a different area of my painting and work there now. So the next part I want to work on is creating a little bit more definition in the texture around the stucco and what have you. So I guess the main thing that I need to do here is get a little bit of dark. So I've got lunar black, and I've also got I can use, say, sepia or neutral tint or one of those darker colors, and then I might warm it up with a little bit of transparent red oxide just to give it and a little bit of that mix that I've already got going on in these darks. So if I just kind of drop a little bit of that in under some of these texture places, then you'll start to see the texture, because the dark is what makes the texture kind of have contrast. So
You're kind of creating a shadow.
yeah, drop shadow, if you will. So that's kind of what I want to do here. And I'm trying to use, some of the colors that I had previously on my brush. Oh, here we go. This is interesting. All of a sudden I thought, hang on, I'm sure there was a drain pipe and a bit of roof coming in over here, and I didn't see it. And I'm like, I wonder what, I'm sure I drew that on there. Maybe I just forgot. And as I'm doing this, I realized, guess what? My painting is upside down.
Ah.
Here it is over here. So
Oh.
I'm going to have to actually, because I've already got the pattern of light, I'm going to actually have to do it upside down now. But it's okay, because it's organic peeling plaster, and it's a window, so it doesn't really matter. But I just think that's funny. I should have twigged earlier, but here it is over here. It needs to be coming in over here, but if we paint over it, it's not that big of a deal. And honestly, this is the thing about watercolor, is that just because it's there doesn't mean you have to paint it, And what you want to do is you just want to make it convincing, right? And that's the whole point of what I'm doing here, is I'm just trying to integrate it so that it feels convincing. So that's still a little bit wet, but I just kind of want to have a little bit of an idea that there's plaster there and there's texture. So, it'll show up if I just put a bit of that dark on there. And so I'm just going to add a little bit around some of these places where you see the texture. And I need to do the same thing down here so that, it feels like you meant it. And this dark will drop into all of these little cracks and crevices. And that's what we want, and if you want to just soften it off, you can. And if it, you don't want it to be too dramatic or whatever, but down here, it still has to remain warm. Up there, I should make it a little cooler because that's further away. So I'll just drop a little bit of that blue into there so that it feels like it's further away. And again, color harmony, So we're just kind of letting all of this blend together. And wherever you brush over, that's where you're going to see the texture. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'll just put a little bit of that on there so that it does feel like it's further away from you. Okay, so now we're at this stage, and typically these are all the lightest colors, and then I've added my darkest dark so that I know the range between my lightest light and my darkest dark. And that's important for me. I mean, most watercolorists will paint from light to dark, and then when they get to the darks at the end, they don't have the relative lightness to darkness. So if I put my darkest dark in now, I've got a range that I can work between. There's a parameter that I have to use. So that's what I'm doing now. I typically I would dry this off. So if you want to take a break or talk about something, now would be a good time. Otherwise,
Okay, well then I guess I'm being told what to do. Well, thank you very
no,
much. But you did say you were a director, so that makes a
well,
lot
you
of
know,
sense.
I,
Okay, so our guest today is Georgia Mansur, and she has some really cool things. As a matter of fact, she has a brand new video out, and baby, it's good.
Hi, I'm Georgia Mansur, and welcome to my watercolor workshop. In this workshop, we're going to be doing a floral watercolor of some opium poppies that I grew in my garden at home in Australia. It's going to be vibrant and juicy and impressionistic, loose. We don't want to get too tight, and just have fun with this because we're going to splash some paint around. I think that some of the techniques that I'm going to be sharing with you might be useful for you in your watercolor. So working in different layers and a bit of glazing and lifting off with your brush and with some hand-cut stencils. I hope this will inspire you to be brave and take risks and really just, don't be afraid to use bold color and go dark and go deep, because that's where you get that really juicy, delicious color. The medium itself is magic, and you just got to get out of the way and let watercolor do what it does best. It's just magic.
Outstanding. Excuse me. I'm all choked up over Georgia's new video. I should mention Georgia's going to be at the Plein Air Convention. She's going to be teaching there, and a great time to get her to autograph your video if you like the physical video like a DVD, or you can have her autograph your tattoos, whatever. Anyway, the convention is coming up May 20 through 24. It is on the edge of being sold out. It's not sold out yet, but it's like minutes away, or maybe a day or two away. Anyway, it's something that is going to be in North Carolina. It's first time that part of the country, and you should come because there's just so much going on. People are having a blast. We're painting outdoors together. We're making friends. We have just so much going on. So make sure you come to the Plein Air Convention. Also, we have the Adirondacks, Paint the Adirondacks, a retreat that I host. That's coming up in June. And it's about 100 people. We just paint together for a week. You roll out of bed. We feed you. You paint. We put you to bed. Well, we don't put you to bed. You put yourself to bed. We have singing. We have a lot of fun. We do portraits at night, and then we do it again in fall, called Fall Color Week this year in Monterey and Carmel. Both of those things are almost sold out. Everything's selling faster. I guess it's because that's just travel is what people want to do right now. Okay, now Georgia looks like she's ready. Georgia, you ready?
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, what are we doing now?
Okay, so now we need to put in the door frame. So I've mixed up a little bit of cobalt turquoise and cobalt blue, and I've just got this greenish old aged color. So I'm going to just go around my shutters, and they're not super vibrant because they're old and faded. And once I get this on, I will be able to go around and kind of age them even more and sort of adjust my lines where I've gone out of the lines and whatnot. So I'm just going to do this now and get this on.
Now that looks a lot darker in the bowl than when it comes out on the paper.
It does, and that's exactly what I was saying about how when it's wet and juicy, it looks really dark, but it's deceptive. So if I touch this, it may bleed, but it is what it is, and we're live, so we'll just go with it.
All right, go with it.
We're gonna go with it. Sometimes you get these happy accidents, with watercolor, and
Well, it is a painting. It's not a photograph.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm getting this down, the two frames in the middle. And like I said, if it's not perfect, don't stress. Watercolor should be fun. Yeah. And if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? Like you just what you need to do is, if you make a mistake, and I think that, that word mistake is really should be an opportunity to be creative about making it work in another way that you didn't plan on. And basically, for me, that means making it convincing. So, it kind of takes the pressure off you. So if you've made a mistake, in inverted commas, really, I just want it to be convincing. So like you said, it's a painting. It's not a photograph, and we're not painting photorealism either. So I'm just going with that.
All right.
All right. So, later we can go in and scrape back, like with our palette knife, we can actually, create a bit of a line for the thing if you want. And let's
The
say
thing, there's a highly technical term, the thing.
Yeah, the door opening. And let's say if these were shutters and I put some of this texture paste on here, I could create shutters by doing it like so, but these happen to be windows, so we're not going to use that technique. But good to know, right?
Yep, good to know.
Yeah, good to know. All right, and you can do that whether you're using texture paste or just simply watercolor. But now I just want to go in and put a little bit of dark in here to make sure that these shutters feel like they're a bit weathered. So actually, I'll wait until this dries a little bit more so that I can dry brush wet onto dry, because then it will skip across those little texture bits that we put on there of the peeling
Okay.
paint. But right now I can't actually do that because it's wet. But I can kind of correct some of those edges. You know how I was saying before, it doesn't matter if I've gone out of the lines. While it's wet, it's an opportunity to make a few corrections with the things that, where I went out of the lines. So I can do that now. And, you just kind of have to play with it. And this little flat brush that I have, it's called an eradicator. So it means that it comes down to like a razor sharp edge, and it's quite short and stiff because it's synthetic. So that's a really nice one to have in your toolkit. And I have these in a few different sizes in my signature brush set. But let me go now onto this area here, because I probably should have done that a bit earlier, but I got a little distracted when I realized my painting was upside down. So you know what? You just have to make it work. You have to make it convincing. So let's do that now. And also, while I've got, that greeny color on my in my palette, I kind of want to take a little bit of that and make sure that there's some reflected light of that as well. And that's that whole thing of color harmony. There are times when you need to be sure that you're working the whole painting, and maybe not, everywhere, but it needs to talk to itself. It needs to have a dialogue all the way around the painting. So you're working it holistically. And, a lot of times that bluey verdigris color is in plaster, as if there's any rust or anything that happens, it oxidizes and it turns that verdigris color. So if I put that in a few of these places, it's also, bringing harmony from, that green that's quite, jarring. We don't want jarring. We want harmony. So I'll put a little bit of that in. And then now I'm going to work on that section. So I'll get my, the color that I was using before is buff titanium. So I'll get a little bit more of that. And it's going to be darker because this is a recess. And you don't see it on this side because of the way that, the angle is. But we're going to put a little bit of that in here. But it needs to be a bit darker than the color that's on the outer plaster. So I'm just going to add that to it as I go. Probably get a bit of green on there, but this is live painting. So, all right, I'm going to now add my Naples yellow to make it warmer, especially down here. And I might have to put a little bit more of a drop shadow down there because it was upside down and I lost some of that definition, but it's okay. We can do it. Here's the thing, Eric. Painting is about problem solving, as you well know. And it's a challenge for your brain, and it keeps you young and healthy and active for well into your old age. So
I should mention that Georgia is 130.
yeah, I don't look bad for 80, do
You
I?
look great. You look great.
I did have a birthday last week, but I'm not telling you how old. Old enough to know better. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more of that blue in that area because that is in shadow, and it also is recessed. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that dark into there. Maybe not, don't make it too perfect. Perfect is boring. And this is, a piece of, architecture that's probably, thousands of
What kind of paper are you painting on?
So this is Arches 300 rough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so I generally use a fairly thick paper when I'm getting things quite wet. So it's usually either Arches, Saunders Medium, or the Balhong Masters rough if I want to go really wet.
And the
And if
rough
I'm-
helps your texture.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I get the rough or the medium because it does, the paper shows through those dimples in the paper,
Yeah.
which is what we want. Now you'll notice I've got like a little hard edge bloom there.
Yep.
And that's not really what we want, but if I was to go back in there now and try and correct that, I would have a different consistency of, the water to brush ratio and the paper, how wet the paper is. So I'm just going to leave that. And then what I'll do is with my subject, there's a big clump of bougainvillea right there. So I'll make that, over the top of that, and you won't know it. So you just have to get a little bit creative with your placement of things. And like I said, I'm the director of this painting, so I get to decide what's going where. So now what I want to do is I want to create a little bit of what's the word? A little bit of the deep shadow that the bougainvilleas are in. So I got to put down the darks, and then I'm going to lay the lights atop and around. But because it's like a bunched up area, it's like if you're painting a bunch of grapes, you got to get your darks in there so you know where the mass is. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to use the same colors that I was using before with the Carbazole Violet, the Quinacridone Magenta, and I'm adding in a little bit of my Lunar Black, just because I love Lunar Black. It's just such a wonderful granulating color. So, and then I'm going to add a little bit at this stage of Indanthrone Blue, which is one of my colors specifically. And it's a rich, rich, dark blue. Little bit staining, so you want to be sure that it's where you want it to go. So I'm going to do that now. So here's my pattern of dark. So I've got to get the masses, and I'm going to cross the boundaries of some of the, like the, okay, it's a little bit, I've tested it, and it's a little bit watery. I need for this consistency of the paint for this to stick, because it's still, the paper's still moist and it wants to bleed a little bit. I don't mind if it bleeds a little bit because this is going to be the underpainting, but I need to make it a little bit more creamy, if you will, because the creamier the paint, the more it will stick where you put it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just I'm just amping that up a little tiny bit. And let's see, that's a little better. And I want to put a little bit more purple in there. Yeah. So I've got a little bit of that, and it's going to kind of cross these boundaries. I'll leave a little bit of that light peeking through. See how that light closed in? You know, watercolor bleeds and runs, so you got to allow for that. But crossing these boundaries is important. And down here, I need a mass of dark, so I'm going to put a little bit here. And there is some here. So you see, I'm not being too precious about this, right? Because nature is random, and if it's too perfect, it won't look real. So this is just the darks that are going to be underneath my bougainvilleas. And I want to leave a little bit of air. You know, it's kind of like when you're doing trees, you need to have a little bit of space in your, you know, sky holes so that the birds can fly through. I think that's probably enough. I might just add a little bit more down here. Just soften those edges a little bit. Okay, and a little bit there. So that's the bulk, the mass of the bougainvillea, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, so now we're going to get straight into the flowers themselves. So I'm switching brushes. I'm going to a finer point brush. And here I want some really light pink in this sun-struck area. So I'm going to go with some of my wisteria, which is a semi-opaque, and it grabs because it's a semi-opaque. So I can put a little bit of that in here. And I'm just going to be doing a bit of stippling, you know, and you'll see that where it's still wet here, it'll bleed. So that's okay. But we want for this area to be quite light because it's in the path of light. And up in here, there will be some up in here as well. And I'm just doing kind of random little strokes. I can add it coming through here, make a few here as well. And then I'm going to go with my opera pink, which is also a very light. It dries super light. It looks really vibrant in the dish, but it dries quite light. So
That's
it looks really.
That's a wonderful color.
It is, yeah, it really is. It's one of my favorites. I like to do a lot of florals, and it works amazing for florals. So you know how bougainvilleas are. They have like a cane, and they kind of shoot out. So I'm trying to create that feeling of shooting out. And then they came down in here into the light as well. So I need to like incorporate that down here too, and down in here. So get a little bit more of that wisteria and get that going there. So it's really the pattern of light. There's light on this side too. So I'm gonna make another little cane going up in this direction. And this is totally random. You get to decide, you know, where you want your bougainvillea to go, because everyone is different. But I'm just sort of trying to create a little pattern of light. And these are still wet over here, so these are bleeding a little bit. They're kind of fuzzing out a bit. So I might have to come back to that later when that's a little bit more dry. So everything in watercolor is about the timing. You know, you really have to decide if you want hard edges, which is dry, wet into dry. If you want fuzzy edges, which is wet onto damp paper, or if you want, you know, completely like no edges, which is wet into wet. So there's, you know, 3 different stages and 3 different consistencies of paint. And I talk about that in my video that I filmed with you in Texas. So yeah, that will be available at the convention, of course. But I'm going to start now adding a little bit of this rose madder permanent, which is kind of like opera, but it's a little bit more dark. So I'm going into those areas that have the bulk, the mass of these, and I'm just allowing this to kind of mix and mingle and let them do their magic for me, so I don't have to do so much hard work. And you know, I want to maintain some of those light glowing things that you see there, because that adds variety and it emphasizes the texture as well. So we're going to keep, you know, going along this path for a while and kind of like get rid of some of those hard edges. That's what I'm trying to do here, because I want to make it look quite random.
It
One
looked
thing
random.
Yeah, it does look random, right? But that's how nature can be, you know, it can be quite random. So we need to work with what we're trying to produce. And I'm trying to make, you know, little brush strokes that are kind of like blotchy, because these are meant to be like little blooms, little blossoms. So now I'm going to go in with a little bit stronger pigment of just plain quinacridone magenta, because these have really rich blooms. I have a lot of these bougainvilleas on my property and I love them. I think they're amazing. One thing I started to mention, then I got sidetracked, is that where you have texture, where you've used the texture paste, the grounds that I was using in the beginning. So it goes on white and it dries white as well. There's a couple of different things to remember about it. So the difference between the gels and the paste is that the gels dry clear, they go on white and they dry clear, and the pastes go on white and they stay white. But that also means that if you want to put the texture paste on in a color, like I could have done it, I could have like added color to the paste before I started painting. You just have to know that you're mixing it into white and it's going to stay white. So you're not going to get the clear, clean colors that you would if you let it dry and then paint over the top of it. So you just have to remember that you're kind of like going to get a tint rather than a clean color if you mix a color into the paste beforehand and then apply it. So
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
If you had masked out and not put color where those bougainvillea are going to be, if you had white paper under that, those would probably stand out a lot more, wouldn't they?
They would. And I personally don't like masking fluid because
well, I wasn't thinking masking fluid as much as just leaving part of it white so you could put that over it.
No? Oh yeah, of course. But I don't feel like it's going to make much of a difference here, because when I have a semi-opaque color like this wisteria, I can go into the dark, and because it's semi-opaque, it's gonna stick and it gives coverage. See how I can go into that dark and break it up?
Yep.
So I'm not too worried about that. But I know what you're saying, but I don't feel like it's an issue in this particular case.
Okay, cool. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, the reason I don't use masking fluid, I mean, I try to drive around my whites if at all possible, especially when painting outdoors. I think it's really obvious when people use masking fluid. The only time I ever really use masking fluid is if I'm doing a floral and it's like got a really dark center, and then it's got like some really fine light stamens or something. That's when I would use masking fluid, because it's just impossible to drive around a bunch of really thin stamens, I find. So I don't do that. But anyway, here we go. We're getting there. We're making some progress. Now that I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and then I can see what I get, because like I said, it does dry a different value to what you've started when it's wet and juicy. So now I want to go back into my doors or windows, whatever they're called. So I'll mix up a little bit more of that door color, window color, which was the cobalt turquoise and a bit of, and here's the thing I want to talk about too, and I talk about this in the video as well. People, especially new watercolorists, gosh, I don't know how many times I've had to say this, but they're afraid to squeeze out a bunch of paint because they feel like they're going to waste it, you know, especially if they're a beginner, like, oh, it was really expensive, I don't want to waste it. But it's a false economy, because if you don't put out enough color, you know, you're kind of scratching around in your palette trying to get some, and that's not fun either. So I feel like I want to reiterate that to people that, you know, I squeeze, it's nearly a full tube into each well. And by the way, I'm mixing, the palette that I use is in the shape of the color wheel. And the reason I do that is so that, you know, when you're mixing, if you want to mix a complementary, the opposite, say if it's a red and green primary floral with, you know, red flowers and green, and I want to neutralize the color in some area, kill it off in some area so that the focal point really pops, I just mix my opposites together to neutralize that color. And if they're on your palette opposite each other, it's a no-brainer. You know, it's like a keyboard. You lay it out like the rainbow of you know, the spectrum of color, and it makes perfect sense. So a lot of people have, you know, like squares or rectangle palettes, but I feel like, you know, when I'm teaching, I like to use the circular palette because it really helps people to understand the concept of color harmony. So I just wanted to make that point, but here we go. I'm back into my darker color now of the shutters, and I've mixed in a little bit of lunar black with it. It's a little bit too black, so let me get rid of that a little bit. And just, yeah. So it's quite creamy now. So if I dry brush over this and it's dry-ish, it'll pick up on some of the texture. So I need to dry my brush a little bit. That's the whole point of dry brush. So if it's too wet, I gotta like use my paper towel and kind of blot it off so that it picks up some of that texture that's on there. I don't know if you're able to see that, but it's
Kind of hard. Kind of hard.
Kind of hard to see that. Okay.
Yeah, I should mention that we're at about a 5-minute warning.
For the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
I know. I'm just getting into it now. We're just getting going. All right. So we've got the main players on the stage. Now I'm going to, and I talk about this, American Watercolor just featured me in an article where I was discussing the last 5 minutes of painting. And here we go. Let's test that theory, right? I say that, you know, that's when you get to put your own calligraphy and your own marks onto your painting and make it your own. So I'm just going to move my chair out of the way because I'm using a long rigger.
Oh, you're getting serious.
Well, these are the things that make it your own. So I hold it at the far back of the long handled rigger so that I have a very loose and fluid flowing thing. And this is really good for making trees and branches and things, but I want to connect all of these clumps. So I see that there's, you know, a little thing coming up here, and then there's another one that's kind of coming through here. So, you know, they don't all have to connect, but I just kind of want to make it so that it feels like these are all coming from the same, you know, space. They're all connected. I'll make it a little bit darker down here. And that is just my raw umber, by the way, in case you're wondering. And I can even, you know, do a few little things there. Now I'm going to use a little bit of my green gold. That's my Aussie green gold, by the way. which of course I love. And I'm using a little bit of the raw umber in there just to make a little bit of foliage, and I can, you know, put a few little bibs and bobs and make it look like it's foliage. And I'll break up some of those big shapes with that as well. It's a little bit wet in there, so I don't want to go too much, but I will, after we go offline, I will sort of like finish this off. But I just wanted to show you how I would approach those last 5 minutes of the painting. It's important to kind of, you know, connect, pull it together, if you will, you know, with some lines and marks that say,
Hold on a second, Georgia. Pull it together. Come on, pull it together.
yeah, there we go. So anyway, I just wanted to make sense. And, you know, when I do get the finished painting, I'll send it along to you. But I think we can probably stop there. I mean, I can go on fiddling for a
Why
little.
don't you turn it around so we can see it?
Okay.
All right.
It's still wet, so I don't want to tip it too much. Is that?
Yeah. Pull it forward towards you a little bit more, towards you. Yeah. Okay. So you can really see the effect of that texture paste.
Yeah, it's starting to crack in here. And if I hit that with the hairdryer, it would crack even more. All of that wood. You can see
right.
it's starting to crack a bit.
Well, why don't you come back on camera for a sec?
Okay.
All right. So our guest today is Georgia MANSUR. Georgia, thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on your new video, Vibrant Watercolors. And man, you really get the vibrancy in there. I think it's good for people to learn how to do that. You're also going to be teaching at the Plein Air Convention, which we're excited about. And we'll see you there, which is pretty quick. It's just around the corner.
Very
and you're going to be on Watercolor Live in January.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
So
got a lot going on.
I do. Yeah. And it's been a pleasure to be here with you. And I hope that somebody got something out of this that they can use. And if you see me at the Plein Air Convention, please come up and say good day. You know, I like to meet people. Yeah. Well, I know you, but
oh,
any newbies that need extra help.
I'll still come up and say good day.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
all right, Georgia, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank
right,
you.
Bye-bye. Well, this has been Art School Live, and I'm Eric Rhodes, and we are here every weekday at 12 noon. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Georgia for showing us how to use all that goopy texture. It looks like fun. I'm going to go try that soon. We will see you soon. Thanks.